Namaste, Aham Darshini. In this video, I'm going to start explaining from the 21st shloka of the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita. If you missed on the explanation of the previous shlokas, or if you'd like to listen the explanation of these shlokas in Tamil, then the links right below in the description box. You can go ahead and watch those videos. And now, let's get started. अर्जुन उवाच सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापयमेच्युत यावदेतान् निरीक्षेऽहं योद्धुकामानवस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यम् अस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे. In this shloka, Arjuna requests Krishna to move his chariot to the middle of both the armies so that he can have a better look at who he must fight against and who he must fight with in this great combat. Arjuna is an exceptionally skilled warrior, and the most powerful Hanuman himself was sitting on top of his magnificent chariot in his flag. His devotion towards Supreme Lord Krishna as such was so great that the Lord himself had agreed to be Arjuna's charioteer, moved by his devotion. In this shloka, Arjuna was seated on the passenger seat giving instructions to Lord Krishna. He also addresses Lord Krishna as Achyuta, the most reliable one, and he requests him to place the chariot right in the middle of the battlefield. Now let's move on to the 23rd shloka. योत्स्यमानानवेक्षेऽहं ययतेऽत्र समागताः धार्तराष्ट्रस्य दुर्बुद्धेः युद्धे प्रियचिकीर्षवः. Arjuna, having the Supreme Lord himself as his charioteer, was totally fearless. His outlook was that the Pandavas were legitimately entitled to half of the kingdom of Hastinapur, but the sons of Dhritarashtra, the Kauravas, had not agreed to share it with him. Arjuna was ready for the battle and eager to get back what was rightfully theirs and punish them for all their wrongdoings. His request for the chariot to be placed in the middle of the battlefield was to take a closer look at the Kaurava army. Arjuna wanted to see all those who had taken the side of injustice. He wanted to punish them equally as they had chosen to be on the wrong side. None of them would be spared. Sanjaya uvacha eva mukto hrishikesho gudhakeshena bharata senayorubhayor madhye sthapayitva rathottamam. Back in the palace at Hastinapura, Sanjaya is narrating the whole scenario about what is going on in the battlefield of Kurukshetra to King Dhritarashtra. In this shloka, Sanjaya says, Arjuna, who has conquered his sleep, requested Sri Krishna to, on having requested by Arjuna, the conqueror of sleep, Sri Krishna drew the magnificent chariot between the two armies. Here it's a rather interesting matter of fact that Arjuna is described as the conqueror of sleep by Sanjaya. Arjuna is the only one has been blessed with the power of having a control over his sleep, which means he could literally choose when he needs to go to sleep and when he needs to wake up. Here Sanjaya mentions Arjuna as Hrishikesha, the conqueror of sleep, to imply that the one who has conquered his sleep is soon going to conquer his own mind and senses, thus leading to his victory on conquering the whole Hastinapura. Now let's move on to the 25th shloka. Bhishma Drona Pramukhatah Sarvesham cha Mahikshitam Uvacha Partha Pashyaitan Samavetan Kuruniti. In this shloka, Krishna addresses Arjuna as Partha, the son of Pritha. Pritha here is another name of his mother, Kunti. And then he points all the warriors like Bhishma, Drona, and the other kings on the Kaurava side, and he deliberately uses the word Kuru to address them. His deliberate usage of the word Kuru here was to remind Arjuna that both Kauravas and Pandavas were all the descendants of the great king Kuru himself. Therefore, the enemy he was eager to kill also happens to be his own family and relatives. The omnipresent Lord was sowing the seed of delusion on Arjuna's mind, but it was only to eliminate it later on. He was preparing the ground for the gospel he was about to preach, the Bhagavad Gita, which would benefit the future generations of Kali Yuga. Now let's move on to the next shloka. Tatra pashya sthithan partha pitranath pitamahan acharyan matulan bhratran putran pautran sakhim sthatha swashuran suhridaschaiva senayorubhayorapi. In this shloka we could know that Krishna's original intention on requesting Arjuna to take a look at all these Kauravas who had gathered to fight against him was very well achieved. Standing there, Arjuna could see both the armies, and in the Kauravas side, he saw his uncles, grandfathers, teachers, nephews, his cousins, grandnephews, his own friends, father-in-law, and a lot of his well-wishers. Now let's move on to the next shloka. Tan samikshya sa kaunteya sarvan bandhun avasthitan kripaya paraya vishto vishidannidam abhravit. Seeing all his relatives present on both the sides of the combat, Arjuna was now overwhelmed with compassion and deep sorrow. Shri Krishna's words had the desired effect on Arjun meanwhile. Looking at the armies on both sides of the battlefield, his heart sank. There were Kurus, all of his relatives, his friends, and his well-wishers, standing on both sides of the combat. The brave warrior who fearlessly wanted to punish the Kauravas for all their wicked deeds of the past, a few minutes back, had suddenly become overwhelmed with all the thoughts in his mind. He could very well comprehend the devastation that this war would cause. His valor seemed to diminish. Hence, Sanjaya has called him Kaunteya, the son of Kunti, denoting that Arjuna had suddenly become soft-hearted, similar to his mother. However, Arjuna was now also confused with all the thoughts in his mind overwhelmed with a lot of questions all of a sudden. Let's see what happens next in the upcoming videos. Thank you. Dhanyavadaha.